Thank you for stopping by my YouTube channel. If this is your first time here, thank you for coming. My name is V. I am the creative artisan at Chastique Designs. Today we are doing something different. Well, not necessarily different, just different for me. My friends always give me these tasks of things that I've never done before. Today is no different. I will be completing a wooden door wreath that is themed for Valentine's Day. If you couldn't tell from these clips, love is in the air. I got all of my supplies from Dollar Tree, Michael's, and Home Depot. So if you would like to follow along and create one for yourself, stay tuned. So here's the supply list. You'll need a wooden round panel. I got mine from Home Depot. I'll link it down in the description. You'll need your choice of paint, brushes, scissors, or wire cutters. If you want, you can add flowers. I will be adding flowers at the end. A staple gun, hot glue gun, short screws, a drill, vinyl with a cutter, or pre-cut letters. Okay, now that we have our supplies together, the first step is to get the wood panel painted. Because I'm trying to be cost effective, I did not bother to buy another paint in the shade of pink that I desired. I'm just going to mix up a few paints to see, and to try and get to a shade that I think complements the accessories I've purchased well. I'm mixing my paint here on a glass cutting board. It washes off really easy, so I really like that. But again, if you don't have to mix your paint, just buy a paint in the color that you want. Please don't mind my dancing. You're gonna see a lot of me dancing and singing. I was playing some music, which is why I'm doing voiceovers at this point, because I didn't want to have any copyright issues. It was at this point when I realized that mixing in the light pink was not helping me lighten that magenta enough. I clearly put in too much magenta. So I'm digging out my white paint, which I know is very low. I use a lot of white paint, and I knew I needed to get some more. I was trying to avoid the process of this, just squeezing and squeezing for nothing to be coming out. But I definitely needed to lighten it up a little faster, and that white helped a lot. There's definitely something so relaxing about mixing paint. I don't know what it is. But here I'm trying to see how well it matches with the pink ribbon I purchased, and I felt fine with it. I'm adding a fluorescent pink to kind of give it a little pop, less of a pastel look to it. You can't really see how it changed on camera, but it definitely gave a little something extra that helped out when the paint actually dried. So now I'm just cleaning off the panel. That's 91% alcohol that I'm cleaning with. I try to get a little dust and impurities off of the wood that could affect the way the paint dries and whether or not it adheres well. I also wet down any surface that I'm painting that's porous like this, just to make sure that it doesn't absorb the paint so fast that I run out of paint before I finish painting. So I decided to grab a larger brush in hopes that it would help me get this painted quicker than it took me to get the water on the board. But I quickly realized that maybe I should have just pulled out my mini roller, which would have been way faster than using the paintbrush. However, I'm just taking it all in, enjoying the relaxing time of just throwing some paint on the board without really thinking about the outcome of what it will look like. Originally, the goal was to leave the edge of the board exposed, where you could see the wood from the front. But I quickly realized that that just wasn't going to work out for me, especially because I didn't tape anything off, and I really wanted to make sure that the circle was as precise as possible. So I just decided to go ahead and paint the full face of the round. The edges are slightly rounded, so you do get a little peek of wood, depending on what angle you're looking at it from. So I was happy with the outcome once this is fully painted. Please keep in mind that this is sped up. I don't really paint this fast. And look at me singing and rapping. Just enjoying the music. When we get to the part where I'm working in a Cricut design space, you'll see a few of the songs, the notifications pop up on my screen. I was jamming, y'all. I was enjoying the time alone, the time to paint. Yeah, this is my happy place, if you couldn't tell. Well, now that this is fully painted and I take my little dance break, we're gonna let this dry and get to work in Cricut Design Space on designing the lettering. So here we are. I'm just gonna start to get my words, get my text of what I'm putting on it. I wanted to say love, kisses, and Valentine wishes. I think the hardest part of working on these projects is always figuring out which fonts I want to use. The more I use Cricut Design Space, the easier it's becoming to determine which fonts work with what look I'm going for. So for both the words love and Valentine, I opted for a traditional font, something that was kind of blocky and bold. And then for kisses and wishes, I went for script font to give it that more whimsical look. You'll see I had a little trouble deciding on the and symbol that I wanted to use. Sometimes the one that goes with the script font doesn't really complement the block font, but in this case I was able to just go ahead and stick with the one that actually was the same font used for the script. In this case, the script is Beauty Gaddish. If you were unable to see that, I was able to download that off of thefont.com. So here I'm just creating a circle. When I'm doing something of this nature, I like to use the shapes as a template if necessary, just so that I know that I'm getting the correct sizing of my lettering, and it's giving me an idea of the placement of, once I put the final product together. So I did put a circle here. I made it pink just for reference, and I made the circle 18 inches because that is the size of the wooden round panel that I have. So now I'm going to start placing my lettering in the circle. I had to move the circle to the back so that the lettering would show up top. Now I'm playing with the colors to see what colors I want to use for what words. And I'm just going to place everything on the circle so that I can see how it's going to look once I start placing it on the actual projects. I will size and resize this over and over until everything is aesthetically pleasing to me. You'll also see I go through changing up the colors just until I'm comfortable or I like the way it actually looks on Design Space. So now that I've swapped all the colors around, I'm actually happy with the way that it looks. So now it's time for me to squish my script fonts together. They do not come already attached, so I attach them, might resize a letter or two, adjust them to make sure they're as even as possible, and then group them back together. The letters are grouped. I can put it back on, resize it to make it fit in the space properly. And now I'm going to work on the wishes. And here I decided, like, I wasn't too sure about that K, and I wanted to see if there was another script font that I liked more. But I ended up just sticking with the one that was already there because it was the most pleasing to me as far as going with that block font that I used for Love and Valentine. So I adjusted a little more, and now we get to wishes. And with wishes, you'll notice that I actually, once I put the letters together, I wasn't too happy with the W. So I just resized the W to make it a little larger. And I felt like that looked a little better to me. Now I'll put that back, make it the right size for the circle. And the more I looked at it, I realized that I didn't really like the fact that Valentine was so much smaller than Love. So I made a few adjustments to the word to make it a little bigger, but still fit in the circle the right way. And this is when I decided to switch the and symbol back to the original script font that I had there. I put those back to white and made my symbol black. And then I adjusted Valentine. I knew I couldn't make it larger without making the letters a little more elongated because the word it's so long that I didn't want it to like fall off the circle. And I'll just fiddle with this a little bit more until everything is at a level of perfection of my liking. And the changes that I make may not look like much to everyone, but to me it makes the world of difference. So now that I've adjusted and readjusted 1,000,001 times, I'm going to go ahead and save it so that we can move on to the next step. Now that our design is saved, our board is dry, it's time for us to do a nice clear coat. I use Rust-Oleum. That'll just kind of seal the paint in. And I did spray it outside, but it was dark, so you didn't see that part. So we're back in Cricut Design Space, and I realized that the word Valentine is actually longer than the 12 by 12 sheet of Oracle 651 that I purchased. So I'm just attaching the letters to one another, except I'm attaching half of the word at a time, if that makes sense. So I attached the V to N, and then I attached the T to E so that they could print in smaller pieces. Okay, so now everything is pretty much sized the way I need it to be and ready to start the process of cutting on my Cricut Maker. I did decide to create some hearts to add to the project, just to add a few accents in empty places. I had to turn the circle off. It was coming up as incompatible, but I don't need it anyway. And here I noticed that the hearts were really big. Like, I didn't want all of them so large, so I came back in and grouped them and resized them and stuff so that they could be more of the size that I needed to be. I forgot that I had the page zoomed out and it wasn't at 100%. So I just made those little changes to the hearts, and then we get to the process of cutting our project. So I did make this decision to duplicate both Love and Valentine. I wanted to cut those two words in both black and red. The idea that I had was to layer them. I wanted to put the black and then put the red on top. You'll see later that I decided to lay it out a little differently, and I'll also explain why I made that decision as well. So now that I have both of those duplicated, I can go ahead and click on Make It. And you'll see everything is on a separate sheet to cut. So let's see what's going on here. I don't know why I did that. I think I was trying to just duplicate the hearts, maybe. I don't know. But anyway, my sister keeps texting me. Yeah, to sure you get a cameo in my YouTube video. I just go ahead and stick my Oracle 651 onto my cutting mat and get that loaded into my machine. So here I'm just making some adjustments, I guess, to the placement. You can't see the screen right now. Taking a little singing and dancing break, because that's what I've been doing this whole time. Singing, dancing, and crafting. And I'm picking out the material that I'm cutting so that the machine does it properly. And then I wait for the magic to happen. So apparently my camera was not on when I was starting the weeding process, but as you can see, I have 2 of the things weeded out already, and I'm taking care of the last bit. I also love the process of weeding. It's like you get to see the final project coming to life. So weeding is fun. Here I'm pointing out the fact that my paper wasn't on the mat properly, so it cut off a piece of the O and the L. And this is when I realized that I might have to switch up how I plan to layer or put down my lettering on the board. So I'm just cutting out portions that go together and portions that don't. I wanted to separate my hearts because they won't be laying directly next to the letters as they were cut out. And here I'm lining up Valentine because remember I had to separate it, but I still have to layer it on the board evenly. So now I realized that you couldn't see what I was doing, so I make adjustments. And I'm just here lining up the word Valentine because I want it to come out even. I also wanted to be able to put this whole word on one piece of transfer tape. So the goal was to get it lined up first and then go ahead with, putting the transfer tape on. I also wanted to make sure none of that scotch tape was blocking any of the letters because then the transfer tape wouldn't pick it up. I taped the back just for a little extra security. And then I start the process of putting the transfer tape on. This was my husband's transfer tape. He does not use it, and I didn't have any more on my Cricut. So now I'm just putting a straight line under the word Valentine because I want to cut that piece, that carrier sheet. I want to cut it as even as possible because that's going to help me line up the word straight on the wooden board when we get to that point. Now, I wasn't too fond of this transfer tape. I guess that's what I get for using something that doesn't belong to me, but he doesn't use it, so he won't even really notice that it's missing. But this transfer tape reminds me of masking tape. It's not very sticky, it tears easy, and I think that would be ideal for like very fragile materials. But you'll notice that the fact that it's not that sticky gave me an issue when I was going through the process of lifting the letters off of the carrier sheet. So I don't think I would use it for a material like this again. I definitely use the transfer tape again, but just not for this type of vinyl. So now that I've gone through the process of getting all of the words and all of the little hearts and bits and pieces stuck to transfer tape, it's time to check our board, which looks to be very dry. There are lines that are on the board itself, I guess because they use pieces of wood glued together and then created the circle from that. So there are lines on the board that give me a good idea of how to get this on straight. So here I am now, peeling the carrier sheet off of the back of the lettering to expose the sticky part. And you'll see that in some cases, the carrier sheet is still very well stuck to the letters, and because the transfer tape is not holding on to them as well as I need it to. And here I am just trying to figure out where I want to place it. I'm trying to make sure that both the V and the E are on there, that it's straight, that I don't have any piece of a letter hanging off. And then I'm like, all right, let me find another line to work from. So I flipped it around. I also go onto Cricut Design Space to pull my image back up so that it can give me kind of a visual of what points of the letter are at the very edge of the circle itself. So I put that, and that, you know what, that's another reason why I like to create a circle large enough on Design Space so I know exactly how it's supposed to look. So now I'm using the ruler just to like get a visual of the center and where my letter should be. So here I see it should be somewhere around the 10-inch mark, and I kind of use that as a guide for putting down these letters at this point. I also realized that I might want to cut that transfer tape a little more even to the edge so that I'm not guesstimating too much. So I cut that off, and that gives me a better handle on getting this laid out straight and even. So now that I have that all sorted out, I'm just gonna go ahead and take a chance and get this down. It looks pretty even to me at this point. I'm using that little, I guess, squeegee tool, I'm gonna call it, to go ahead and brayer the vinyl onto the wood and then pull the transfer tape off. And it did, at that point, it decided it wanted to stick to the letters and started pulling the letters off. I was just so confused with this whole transfer tape situation. But we got Valentine on there, and it looks great. And I go ahead and I just rub it a little more just to make sure that everything is well stuck to the wood. We don't want this coming up at a later date. This Oracle 651 is an outdoor vinyl. But you know, that doesn't mean that it can't come off, especially on something like wood. People tend to use heat transfer on wood instead of outdoor vinyl. But since this was my first time, I wanted to go with the cost-effective option. And like I said, it's for a friend. If she has an issue where something is lifting, she has the luxury of coming to me and asking me to fix something. But if I was to make this for someone else, I probably would go ahead and use heat transfer. So here I'm starting the process of layering the letters onto the black, and I quickly realized that I'm just going to have to do this by hand, letter by letter, to make sure that everything is laid out even. Had I used clear transfer tape, I would have been able to do this much easier with all the letters attached like that. But because that transfer tape is a solid color, it was harder to see through. So I just took my time, did one letter at a time, and boy, when I finished writing out the word Valentine, I was so relieved. But I kind of liked how the black created a shadow and helped that red pop off of the pink. So I'm done with the red Valentine, and it is time to get one of these script fonts on. Um, in my mind, it just made sense to do wishes first, and here I am again struggling to get this carrier sheet off of the lettering without the letters coming up off of the transfer tape. And here you can see the carrier sheet ripped a little bit. It was very well stuck to the lettering. So I'm just picking off some little extra paper here. And again, I view what's on the screen a few times just to make sure that I'm placing in the right spot. And then I just throw it on there. At that point, Valentine is there. I use Valentine as my basis for getting everything else on. And look how that white looks on that pink. It is so pretty. Like I just love how this came out. And this is why I love when my friends and family challenge me to do things that I haven't done already, because I never would have thought to do one of these if she didn't ask. So here I'm just going to place love first because I did want the K to overlap the O in love. And now I just kind of check to see, again, it's like what they say, measure twice, cut once. I consistently will just check what I'm doing before I make it final. And here I decided to flip it around to give myself a better angle to, to view and make sure it goes on straight. So I put the kisses down just so that I can see where it's supposed to sit and how much room I needed to leave. And then I go ahead and I start trying to get the love on there as straight as possible. The last thing I wanted to do was to leave markings on the pink. So I didn't want to take the chance of putting like a pencil mark or something so that I can get things on straight. I just kind of eyeball it. And that's really the beauty of getting handmade items. Yes, we do make sure that things are precise and there's a level of perfection. But at the same time, you have to expect just a little bit of human error when you're getting something that's specially made just for you. So here I am peeling up the transfer tape, well, the carrier sheet off of the transfer tape so that I can put down my last word. So now that I got the last word on, here I go showing it off and then realize that the and symbol is missing. So I'm going to put the and symbol on. I love the way this came out. The colors really complement one another in a nice way. My focus was to try to make sure that it was nicely balanced, and I think I pulled that off pretty well. So after I put the and symbol on, we can move on to making a bow. Now that that's all done, we can move forward with doing our bow. Here I'm trimming off the wires that are sticking out. These are wired ribbons. That burlap ribbon I originally purchased for to make curtain tiebacks for my living room. So I had a good amount of that left over, and I wanted to incorporate that because the friend that is receiving really likes farmhouse style things, and I felt like the burlap and the plaid together would give it a nice farmhouse touch. I am not going to lie to y'all, I struggled with making the bow. This was like my 15th or 20th attempt at making a bow. I found a YouTube tutorial on how to make bows. I'll link that down below as well because she was an absolute lifesaver. I didn't do the bow exactly how she showed, but I kind of pulled parts from different areas of the tutorial to make this bow happen. As you can see, I struggle a little bit trying to figure out how I was going to get this all together, but I made it happen. I didn't put the pipe cleaners in the description. Like I said, I thought I knew how to make a bow until I got to making the bow. An alternative option to the pipe cleaners would be zip ties, or jewelry wire. That would be helpful as well. You could also try using twist ties. I don't know how strong those are. I did have to grip these pipe cleaners pretty hard. I don't know if that's because they're soft in texture, so it was just like slipping out of my hand. But it did help to cinch in the middle, up until the point where I was ready to cut off the excess ribbon and then get my center portion together. The glue gun comes into play. I don't think I recorded using the glue gun, but the glue gun comes into play to make sure that those little free edges of the ribbon in the back are glued down, and to ensure that the bow won't come apart. So here I just used the glue gun. I'm checking to see if it's hot. It wasn't hot. But I'm using the glue gun to glue down those free edges, where I cut the ribbon, just to make sure that my center portion doesn't fall apart, doesn't untie rather. Um, and then you'll see me struggle a little bit. I really wanted to add that sheer red ribbon. I couldn't figure out how to do it. So that's when I opted to just go pick up some silk flowers so that I could add flowers, which you'll see later in the clip. I didn't record myself adding the flowers, but you'll see it in a clip where I show you the finished product. So I just fluff up the bow, and here I go, just trying to make this ribbon happen. I really thought it was pretty, and sometimes I get caught up and stuck with an idea in my mind where I really don't want to let it go. So here I go. I was just like, oh, maybe I'll just put like a little bow in the middle. Yeah, that wasn't working out. So at some point I just said, forget it, and chucked it off to the side and moved on with attaching the bow to the board. And then here I go again with the red, trying to get that red onto this wreath. So I've pulled out my handy dandy staple gun. That staple gun I've had for a while. I purchased it at Home Depot. It takes staples and I believe finishing nails or brad nails, one of the two. I bought it because I needed to fix up some trim around a door that we had. So now I'm just taking the time to try to find the center of the back, right in the top area of the panel. And I kind of just dug my nail into the area that I thought was the best to mark it so that I would see it once I flipped the board over. Now I'm searching for my screwdriver and my screws. So now that I have that together, I'm just going to take this ribbon, and I decided to fold each side in half and then fold it slightly upwards. I'm sorry, I didn't realize that you couldn't see exactly what I was doing from the camera. And here I'm just screwing into the ribbon just to hold those folds in place. And once the screw comes out the back, I can go ahead and start to screw it into the board. At this point, I realize you can't see what I'm doing. Y'all, this is a learning process for real. I'm gonna get better, I promise. So now that I've turned it around, or turning it around, I'm just double checking to make sure that I'm getting this in the center back of the board. And I shift it down a little bit, and I just start to screw that in to hold the ribbon. And like, this board is heavy, y'all. It's 1 inch thick. It's 18 inches. It has an 18-inch radius, and then it's a full 1 inch thick. So if you happen to purchase wooden boards from, I'm gonna say, like Amazon or like a craft store, if you purchase those craft boards, those boards are only a 1/4 inch thick, and they won't be able to take a screw. So you'll need to find an alternative to actually attach this. I've seen people drill holes and just tie rope through it, like jute through the holes. So that's an option as well. So here I'm thinking that I'm going to screw in the ribbon to separate it, but instead I realized that, you know what, I'm just gonna use a staple gun because the screw wasn't working out. So I just separated the ribbon a little bit to open it up and stapled it in. And please be careful when using a staple gun, guys, because if that goes through your finger, whoo. So now I'm going to attach the bow. And all I did was just stick the staple gun into the back of the bow, so that the staple would be hidden from being seen. So it's like I'm kind of inside the bow, so you'll see me stick my hand in there, and I was very careful to make sure that my finger was not under a space where the staple would go in. So at this point, I just knew I was finished, and I loved how it came out, but I kept feeling like something was missing. So I went back to Dollar Tree and bought some flowers, and this is the final project. I'm absolutely in love with it. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked it, make sure to leave a comment, subscribe, share, and come on back because I'm going to be doing some more tutorials, y'all. Bye.